longtime friend of the show, NFL analyst and handicapper Adam Chernoff now joins the program. Of course, if you've checked out the show over the years, you know him from his appearances during the NFL season. His podcast is called The Simple Handicap. Making a career move, by the way, somewhat,
yes,
which we'll get into coming up in about 15 minutes. How are you, pal?
Doing great. Good to be down here. Going to be a fun week and a fun weekend ahead, too.
Okay, so we were just talking about, we were doing the look-ahead numbers to Week 8, right? And the Vikings are at home hosting the Cardinals. The Vikings are 6.5. And I thought Arizona was going to be bad this year. I hate them. I think they're terrible. But I also don't, the Vikings are 5-1. Can I lay 6.5 with the Vikings? We're talking about survivor picks. There's something about Minnesota that feels off as well. Where are you at with the Vikings?
So think about Minnesota as what we know them as last year, which was this team that would get out to leads like this. They would get ahead early in the game, and then we'd see Zimmer hammer on the brakes. Everything would come back, and then they'd end up blowing ridiculous games almost week after week after week. It was frustrating to watch. To me, there's been this change within this team where Lions, they're falling behind, they come back, they win the game. Saints, they have a big lead, they blow it, they still win the game. Then the next week against the Bears, same thing, big lead, yes, they blow it, still find the way to win. So it's they have all this talent. It's this great team of now with the offensive coach, but to me, there's this fundamental change where it's a different team that from last year where they blew all these games, now they're winning ugly. And as a handicapper, you want the teams that get out ahead, get leads, and might not cover, because that's a better indicator of future success than these teams that come back late and get the backdoor covers. I think Minnesota's a really good football team.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Like the Vikings.
Okay. Where are you? Okay. Real or Fugazi, the Giants? Because you were on them before the year,
of
and
course.
You said Dayball Coach of the Year. They're 5-1.
If any other team was in this situation, we would probably find flaws with them in some way. And I can't help but look at the Giants and give them a pass in many regards, despite being 5-1. So if we think about it, they've had all these injuries at wide receiver. They've had nobody out there for 3 of their 6 games. They had the London game that they had to travel to. And they're winning because of coaching and offensive play calling. Uh-huh. And so as much as I want to look at the Giants and be like, okay, here's this 5-1 team, the market's not fully respecting them. They're 3-point dogs this week against Jacksonville. And I want to be like, where's the hole here? What's wrong with them? I don't know if there is anything. I think it's just a team that has maybe overachieved to a little bit, but this is what you get when you have really good coaching with really good play calling, and they're just finding ways to win games. And so yeah. I don't feel that the Giants are as fraudulent, as we'll call them, as a lot of other teams that we've seen in years past.
How about your team, the other one in New York, the Jets?
The audacity. And I'm a Jets fan, so the last time that I've had fun watching the Jets was in the back room of a casino in Trinidad and Tobago in 2011 when the Bart Scott game against the Patriots when they won in the playoffs. Sauce Gardner at the end of the Packers game, the rookie, ran to somebody in the stands,
yes,
got the cheese hat, put it on his head, and started running around the stadium calling out fans. Robert Salah got 1 penalty because he was in the end zone celebrating with his team. You have Breece Hall doing the Lambeau leap. This is like a bunch of high school kids with a chaperone who wants to be partying with them. It's unbelievable to watch. It's as explosive and dynamic of offensive talent the Jets have had in about 10 or 11 years. I don't know where this goes, but when we look at their schedule, they get the Broncos now, who may be without Russell Wilson. That's going to be big news coming up. Then you have the Patriots in a QB situation we don't know.
Hey, what's a downgrade with Rippon, though? You might get a shot in the arm with that.
Well, it's what do you upgrade from something that bad? But
okay, sure.
But like we're looking at their schedule,
yeah.
Broncos, Pats, Bills is tough, obviously, but then Patriots and Bears. So the Jets have to find the way to win 3 of these 4 upcoming outside of the Bills, and if they can do that, I think they can sneak in the playoffs. But we can't hide the fact that they've had a couple games now. Steelers QB switch midway through. You get the Dolphins who had to go to Skylar Thompson on the second play. So there's been some of that, too, that I would point and say, let's see what happens here. But there's no denying that it just looks different for the Jets.
You've been pointing that out, I want to say, 2 weeks, right? You were saying, I don't know what this means, but every comment coming out of Jets headquarters and the chemistry on the team appears to be like through the roof.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And you see it on social. Like, these guys are talking to each other and celebrating and posting pictures. They're acting like they're one of the best teams in the NFL. And at 4-2, they're the second best in the AFC, which is crazy. But it's just from this Jets team that you've just looked at for years and years now and said, like, where do you even find something positive? All of a sudden now there's so much young talent. You see things on both sides of the football. There's something here. I don't know if it translates to a great season the rest of the way, but it's different this year with the Jets. And the pros before the season, I mean, people couldn't get enough of this team in the over, so it's coming to fruition so far.
I bet the over, too.
Yes, you did.
But everyone said, look at the early part of the schedule. Good luck winning some games.
And now they get through it.
I know. And there's so many winnable games on the back end.
Yep.
Two teams we thought would be the best in the league, or certainly the NFC coming in. Patience or panic time. Let's start with the Packers. I just ran it down. Bad on third down, bad on fourth down. Remember, they were so good in the red zone.
Yep.
Bad in the red zone this year. Can't stop the run. And as Rodgers said, we're not generating big plays in the passing game. What do you want to do with the Packers?
I'm stuck with this team because I really want to buy into everything you're hearing them say during the week. So before the London game, Rodgers calls out LaFleur. He says, we got to air it out more. We got to open up the offense. And they did for the first half, and then in the second half, they just abandoned the run that was working. And they end up blowing that game. And then they played the Jets, where whether it was Rodgers' thumb, I don't know. Whether there was just Jets' exuberance that caught them off guard, I don't know. But you're watching this offense struggle to move the football. It's not I like everyone wants to point out the lack of talent at wide receiver, skill. There's guys out there that are making plays when the ball's getting to them. To me, it is just this incredibly slow-moving, stuck-in-the-mud offense that has the potential, when you see them go with tempo, mixing it up in the second half, like they've had some great drives, but they just continue to play as the slowest-paced team in the league. I don't understand it. And they're snapping the ball 3 seconds on the play clock, 4 seconds. To me, it's just really becoming predictable and slow. I don't know. They're now 20-1 to make their price points fell off a cliff. It's incredible, but it's I want to think that they can still come around. So I'm not selling the Packers all the way just yet.
That was a disgusting performance at home against the Jets.
Yep.
Tampa Bay, worst rushing attack in the league, 22nd on third down, 21 points or fewer 5 of the last 6 games.
The weird thing about Tampa Bay right now is that there seems to be this head coaching, offensive coordinator push and pull back and forth for who has control over the play calling and what this team does. I don't know how it looks when you have Tom Brady, who left the team that skipped walkthrough on Friday to go drink with Robert Kraft in Manhattan at his wedding on a Friday night, shows up late, has a terrible game at Pittsburgh. They lose that. But Todd Bowles wants to run the ball more. There's no running a game. Byron Leftwich is trying to find something in the passing game. That's not working, too, because the pass protection's not there. And so is it the head coach or the OC leading the way here? If it's one or the other, Todd Bowles, we know, one of the worst head coaches ever in the NFL. Know that very well as the Jets fan, but he's a much better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach now put in this role. You just feel like something's not all there with the Bucs, but at the same time, they've had a ton of injuries. They had a bunch of new faces up front blocking. If they ever sort that out, then that makes Brady a lot more comfortable. And so I would say between the Bucs and the Packers, as much as I don't want to all the way sell the Packers, I think there's more optimism overall about the Bucs just because there's probably more offensive talent, but the coaching situation scares me a whole lot more.
We talked about this yesterday on the show. I'll put the number at 3.5, over under that many elite teams right now in the league.
A good number.
I think it's under. I think it's 3 right now. It can change, certainly, but
Bills, Chiefs, Eagles. And then you're there's this big drop where then you're at like the Niners, the Vikings, that whole group. Good number, 3.5. Good number.
I said maybe the Cowboys eventually. Because I mean, how can you not firmly believe in this defense right now?
You believe in the defense. How healthy is Dak coming back?
Yeah, that's the question.
If we get the games for the week, there might be a take on that one. But yeah, the defense for real right now for the Cowboys. Boomer bust on the secondary side, but I don't know if I'm putting the Cowboys firmly in that elite group yet. So that's a pretty good number, 3.5.
I don't trust McCarthy or Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody does.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Kellen Moore is not a good coordinator.
Yeah.
an interesting situation with that head coach OC combo too.
We continue here with Adam Chernoff in studio, NFL analyst and handicapper, longtime guest here on this show. We'll find out what he likes this week in the NFL coming up in a little bit, but he is making what do you want to call this? A career move to some extent. You're going to remain in the space. You're going to focus more on betting and handicapping and maybe cut back a little bit on the overall content. Is that fair?
We'll call it a career pivot. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So was at covers.com for close to 2 years, have nothing but good things to say about everything that happens at Covers. Fantastic company, just great people working there. Awesome spot to be. But I realized more so this year than last year. It was starting to come in, but this year I noticed it too, that like outside of sort of the network space at the moment, what goes on here at VSiN and everything, I noticed that where I'm doing a lot of my content and my work, a lot of it sounds the same. A lot of it's starting to sort of meld together and be people talking about the same thing. And what I've noticed myself is that my stuff's starting to sound very similar season after season too. And so there was, when I was starting, there was this growth in the betting side 5-10 years ago that was continuous and learning and learning and learning. I haven't done a lot of that in the last couple of seasons. And so that to me is concerning because you're obviously talking about betting. And what I'm doing, if you're not improving as a bettor and a handicapper, then the content isn't improving either from my side personally. And so there's now an opportunity where I can go and learn a lot more about betting, learn a lot more about handicapping, and become even better.
So you're making the move from covers.com, and you've been living in Calgary now.
Yep.
You're from that area.
From Saskatchewan, Canada originally,
right?
And now in Alberta. That's right.
So eventually you're going to be making the move to somewhere in Southern California.
That's the hope. Yeah.
Around Manhattan Beach, totally different lifestyle for you.
Completely different. And so I'm going to work for Right Angle Sports, which is a betting syndicate, betting group that is a team of professionals. And so I'm going in to learn from them. A couple of them are based in that area. They're scattered all around. They're as successful as it gets when it comes to betting on college sports. They've now had a ton of success in the NFL. And so to me, avoiding winter first and foremost, there's a border and custom situation where you can't just, as a Canadian, just pack up and move into the States. But I think for sure, winters in California, a lot more appealing than winters in Alberta, Canada. Right. Don't get me love Alberta and Canada, but you can get warm weather every day. I'll take it.
I've been to Saskatchewan.
Oh boy,
Regina, Saskatoon, a goalie camp.
There we go. What was the goal? Where was the goalie camp?
It was in Saskatoon. Yeah, and then right. I mean, it's something, man. It's a scene.
In winter, it is desolate.
Can you put a price on that, though? To wake up and it's perfect every day, as opposed to what you have in Calgary and Saskatchewan. But you're going to find out what the price is going to be. We're going from a townhouse in Calgary to Manhattan Beach or something. Who knows?
I am willing to take the hit to the wallet to find out. I'm pretty sure I know how this plays out and what the end result is. But when you get to right now is okay because you're still not dealing with like the foot or two of snow outside. But when it gets to like January 12th and you wake up and you go outside and you look around and it's dark and it's 8:30 in the morning and you're just freezing and your face hurts, it's like there's got to be a better way.
It gets old after a while.
We're gonna find out. Yeah,
it does.
Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna hit traffic though too.
So can you explain a little bit more about what the operation is like at Right Angle Sports? I'm aware of them. I have been for a long time.
Yep.
But for many people watching the show, they may have never heard of them before. I don't know what you're willing to say and what they're okay with you saying, but I mean, how deep they really get into this stuff.
Nobody gets into it deeper for college basketball. I'm 100% confident of that, and I haven't experienced it firsthand, but the amount of work and effort that they put in behind the scenes to have the information that myself and anybody watching wishes that they had for every single game, every single day is unmatched. So they put in a ton of work. I don't know the full roster count yet, so to speak, but I know that there's a team of researchers that are looking at every game, pulling in all the information possible. There's a team of professional bettors who are doing all the decision-making. They also have a service attached to it at RAS Picks, where it's a professional targeted service where they're working with other people who are either betting large amounts or they are working with people who are trying to bet themselves as groups or anybody who can join into the service. And they've had success with that dating back to 1997. Ed, who's running everything there, is probably as widely respected as anyone that I've ever met in the space from the betting side. And so to be able to go work for them, learn from them is going to be just invaluable for me. And the content that I make from that, hopefully in the future, is going to be even better with my podcast every day and things like that too.
So we had a lot of questions about this.
Sure.
You're going to keep the podcast going. And more importantly for us, you're going to keep coming on the show with us.
Oh, my dad's watching at home. There was his first questions. I told him, I was like, I'm making the move. And he's like, are you still going on with Mitch and Pauly? I was like, absolutely. And so,
very important question.
Of course. And so, I'll be here as we planned. And then there might be potential where I learn enough about college basketball in the next few months that post-football season, there can be some college basketball talk for the first time ever from my side. So we'll see how I do. Hopefully I do well.
I commend you, too, because I wonder how many people in your position would put their feet up and say, okay, I'm at Covers, I have a big following, I got this, but I can learn and become better at what I do. That's very interesting that you're deciding to do that. I wonder how many people would do what your approach is going to be here.
There's so many different ways that you can now make a living in betting. And so it's not really defined where 15 years ago when I started, you were either betting or you were booking.
But you also blew up. I mean, you have a big following at Covers. I mean, that was
I'm going to miss the shows for sure.
Yeah.
But there was, to me, doing it, especially this year, like I just knew that like this as myself, I wasn't getting better with the betting side. And when you're doing 6 shows a week, 10 shows a week, 15 shows a week, whatever it was, it's hard to find time to do that well and improve at doing the media. Like the biggest conversation is, well, why aren't the best bettors on all these shows and ESPN and Fox and all these big channels? Like, why aren't they doing all these shows? It's like, because this is hard. You guys are doing this every single day. It is hard to do 20 minutes, let alone 3 hours every single day. And so to get good at that, but then still get good from the betting side and improve on that, it is a very hard balance back and forth. And so there's a lot of people that get into it. They get the salary, they get the media opportunities, and they're like, this is great. And that's fantastic for them. But for me, the passion that I have is from the betting side, always has been and always will. And so to get better at that is valuable for me.
To Pauly's point, totally, we tip our cap to you, man, for making this move. Something you didn't have to do, but you wanted to do. So good for you. So then to pivot this week in the NFL, what are some early looks that you have for this week?
I like that segue.
Yeah.
This is the first one we'll get into. You guys know this. This should be on a T-shirt, the Jared Goff betting checklist.
Okay.
We've been here a couple times over the last few seasons here on the show. Is he on the road? Is he under pressure? Is he laying points? We're probably not going to see a situation, maybe again, as him as a starting quarterback, where he's going to be laying any significant points on the road. So that's like the third point of the checklist is dying out. But like you mentioned last segment, Pauly, like this Cowboys defense, whether or not the secondary is for real, we'll see. But what we know for certain, this defensive line is for real. And as good as the Lions offensive line has had the potential to be, we saw the Eagles offensive line, which is much better, one of the best units in the league, especially in the second half, really struggle when the Cowboys said, we're going to bring blitz, we're going to bring extra guys. They were able to generate pressure. Nobody's generating more pressure per snap than the Dallas Cowboys. Jared Goff is going to be all over this, and we know what happens when he faces pressure, falls off of a cliff. I'm anti-Dan Campbell, have been all season. That continues here. But more importantly, Prescott comes back, so that's an upgrade. One of the odds makers that I respect the most in the NFL last week, or for the last game for the Lions, said that the Patriots, if they had Mac Jones in that game, would have been 6.5-point favorites. The Patriots closed 3.5. So I'm looking here at 7. You get Dak back. That's kind of the same price point to someone that I really respect was making the Pats with Jones. I think the Cowboys better than that. So I know this is at 7. Prescott is going to practice today. I think all week as he practices, this number will tick up a little bit. The Lions' defense is a fade in play here. A lot going on, but this is, to me, a spot where the Cowboys get a big win at home against a lifeless Lions team. And we should start talking about Dan Campbell getting on the hot seat. When's his time to go?
Wow.
That needs to. This might be the turning point.
Let's quickly do a pro tip here. You get one every single hour on VSiN. The line here may be a little bit fishy in college football. Well, sharp money was on LSU. They opened up the dog. Now they're favored, unranked home favorite versus a ranked team. And at some spots, getting about 30% of the bets. The pro tip of the hour, doing every hour on VSiN across every show. That means at least 20 every day. Available for VSiN Pro subscribers only at VSiN.com, where you can sort them by sport and by show.
If I knew the person who sent the tweet, I would call it out. It got like 30,000 likes on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Boosts are not a conspiracy by the sports books to be in cahoots with leagues to encourage people betting $25 on these boosts to end up losing their money.
There's a guy with a blue check mark who covers this. Like, this is ridiculous. He tweeted like something similar. Something going on. Herbert doesn't throw for a touchdown with the boost. Something going on.
Oh, boy.
I
missed that one.
The tweet was along the lines of Herbert has thrown a touchdown in 26 consecutive games. He was minus 800 to throw a touchdown tonight. They boosted it to even money, and he doesn't. You can't convince me that sports books are not working with the leagues.
That's the tweet.
This is an acquisition tool where they just pick something and boost it to get you to bet on something you're already going to bet on. So we need to settle down with that in the general media.
And the reminder from David Purdom, who covers gambling on ESPN, was apropos yesterday, too, when he said, basically, if you think games are rigged all the time, then you need to get out of it. Stop betting.
Stop betting.
Stop betting, right.
Yep.
Do you hear that, by the way? But we continue here with Adam Chernoff in studio, longtime guest here on this show. Great NFL handicapper and analyst. Do you hear that from people like casual sports fans, friends that you might have like up in Canada? Whoa, this stuff, I'm not so sure it's on the up and up. I still hear it to this day from friends who are on the fringe.
Every day the Twitter inbox gets something that says this was rigged or this line is at this spot. Surely the sports books must know something that we don't. The Alabama-Tennessee game. I don't even watch that much college football.
Yeah.
I was watching that and I made a comment about the last play. There's still replies 3 days later, people coming into that tweet saying that Vegas made the call or
made the call. It's always a good one.
Like there's the back phone like in Goodfellas where they're calling the Goodell telling them that they could. It's constant, but it's part of.
I don't know what's worse. You're betting on it or you're watching it. I mean, if you think it's fixed, it's scripted. I mean,
right. If you really think it's wrestling.
Yeah, right.
Yes, exactly.
Right, sure.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've told this story before. It was a long time ago here on this show anyway. How much of it can you tell for people who have never heard this before? You're still a young guy, right?
Just turned 30.
Oh, boy, you're just turned 30?
What?
How's that possible?
Go back to Canada.
Well, when you're betting and you're doing it every day, you age about 2 times quicker. So it's.
Oh, man.
I was in Vegas. I was in bed at 8:30 yesterday.
Were you really?
There you go. Yeah. That's showing my age right there.
It's coming.
You could have been retired, though. When? Like, you could have been retired at, 22, 23 years old, 24? Do I have that timeline right?
Well, so let's set the story. So I left Saskatchewan, where I graduated high school barely when I was 18. Just days after graduating, went on a one-way ticket to the Dominican Republic and had just a little bit of money in my pocket. And I was like, I'm going to see how long I can make it betting sports. I say a little bit of money. It was $2,000 from pushing wheelbarrows of concrete for a company in a small town all summer. And so ended up in the Dominican Republic and just really lucked my way into a right spot, right time. Ended up as a bookmaker, and there's quotations on the first one, in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, in the back of a members club, which is what they call casinos that were unlicensed. But basically, the members club meant at the door there was a clipboard with a piece of paper. You had to sign your name. Once you signed your name, you acknowledged that anything on the other side of the door was okay and above the law. And so you walk into this place, and there's a blackjack table, a rum 32 table, which was the card game, a roulette table, and then I had whiteboards on the wall that I made with masking tape and duct tape to segment off the sections. And I wrote in with marker what the odds were for games, and I copied online websites to take bets. And so that lasted 3.5 months before it became too unsafe for a guy that looks like me to be walking around Port of Spain, Trinidad, Tobago at 2 a.m. And so from there, I went to the Bahamas, where it was a legitimate bookmaking operation. Started there, learned everything I know about the bookmaking side. Was in the Bahamas, in the Dominican Republic, in eventually Colombia for the next 5 years, working remote at the time, what we know it now as, for this company that was based out of the Bahamas. They had 32 retail locations in the Bahamas, and they had a website. They booked from all over the Caribbean as an offshore website. And so I was doing their NFL and learned everything about bookmaking for 5 years, wrote significant handle, but that was like the first foray into bookmaking. And so I did really well there. But where the story that you're getting to comes from was while I was in the Bahamas, I was on the sports betting side. And all these places were called web shops at the time, which was basically a giant room of computers and stations where you could go in. And then again, once you signed into the computer, you acknowledged that anything on the computer was okay. And they couldn't be prosecuted for anything that was on the computer. And so they had casino and slots and sports betting and everything, and people would deposit and play into their accounts. That went through regulation eventually. When it was going through regulation, there was all the records were made public for what these sites were doing and the revenue streams and where everything came from. So on the sports betting side, we were writing 5 to 10 million in handle a month, depending on what month it was and went higher and lower. And these sheets came through, and there were a couple of them with a few more zeros on the end. And I was looking at them, and I was like, what is this? Is this slots? What is it? And it was what they called numbers. So in the Bahamas, one of the most popular forms of gaming is playing the numbers, which is making bets on U.S. lotteries, but they pay significantly higher odds. So there's people every day that are playing the Florida lottery, the California lottery, the New York, all the lotteries, the pick 2, pick 3, pick 4 in the States. In the Bahamas, they're going there to play that, and people from the States go there to play it because instead of getting your 500 to 1 payout on a pick 3, you're getting 950 to 1. And so there's this massive business. I worked there for 5 years, had no idea. And I learned a little bit about that, and I was like, oh my God, this is here. And so while I was living in Colombia, got back in touch with the people that put me in the first job in Port of Spain. Where this got really interesting is in Port of Spain, there's a game called Playway. And it is a lotto game with now 4 draws per day. You pick numbers from 1 to 36. And there's this whole intertwined story with what every number means and its significance and all these religious symbols that are attached to it within the culture. It's just built into the culture in Trinidad. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed going back and when I was there the first time 5 years prior was when the draws come up on TV, all the TVs stop. Everybody from where they're doing comes out, looks up at the TV. They watch the draw because everybody plays it. So I'm sitting there 5 years into the bookmaking side in the Bahamas. I see what's going on in Trinidad, and I'm like, well, hold on a minute. The government in Trinidad is paying 24 to 1. Why don't we pay 34 to 1? I mean, it's basically roulette. Casinos are getting away with that. Like, what? Why don't we do that? And so I ended up working out a deal with the boss who gave me the first job in Port of Spain, who had a lot of these members clubs. And I was like, let's make a deal where I can rent out essentially like the porch or the entranceway in your casinos, and we'll book these draws. She's like, okay, so let's do it. And we started everything within the matter of a couple weeks. He let me have some of his staff to run these draws, and it was going for a couple weeks. And I went to Tobago specifically about 2 weeks into it. And anyone that's been to Tobago, probably not a lot of people watching, but when you're there, it's this tiny island. Everything's very small, spaced out, not a lot going on. He picked me up at the hotel about 8 in the morning, and he's like, we'll go down, we'll see the draw. And so we're driving through this little town. We get breakfast. We're pulling up, and there's this line of people on a sidewalk just stretched up. There's nothing else going on. There's this line of people on one side of the sidewalk. And I look at him. I was like, what's going on? He's like, well, that's your lottery game. I was like, oh, boy, because this was not above board at the time. It was kind of on the side. You're not really acknowledging it. So we pull up to the members club. There's about 60 people waiting for the doors to open outside to place their bets on the draw that morning. Right across the street is a government, like a government drugstore where people are supposed to be playing. Everybody's coming from where they're supposed to be playing to where we're doing it. But because the doors aren't open, because it's a members club and it's 8 in the morning on a Tuesday, everyone's waiting outside. So I'm like, well, this can't last very long. and so I was like, so we had to figure out a solution to that. And we eventually tried to take it online, which is where the downfall happened. Had some security issues with the app after about a year of big success. And that I'm selling the story short here, but once
big?
it was big.
Okay.
There was 8 vacations taken in the year. We were living well.
Am I exaggerating by saying you could have been retired by now?
If that was still going, yes. No question about it. Because the amount of people that were playing it, the amount of people that went over to the mobile app in 2015, and you got to remember, technology there was lagging behind. So we're talking about like full-on mobile app equivalent in the U.S. of 2010. It was massive numbers. But, yeah, the unfortunate ending to that one, to say the least.
Amazing story.
That was a fun few years.
I'm sure it was. And you're, again, early 20s at this time?
I would have been 23. 23, 24.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.